was first introduced to the indie game Limbo when I watched a video relating to the platform genre, since this game is a platformer after all. The game caught my interest, hence why I eventually got around to getting it for myself, which I did back in 2014. I downloaded it straight from the PlayStation Store on my PS3 and completed it on that very day because of its short length. That's not to say the game is bad because of this, since it is a 2D indie game and those types of games usually aren't very long to begin with. Besides, I got it for a reasonable price, so my money couldn't have gone to waste either way. Unless of course the game was utter garbage, which would obviously be very problematic. Though is that the case with Limbo, or is it actually good? Let's find out. Limbo is a video game created by a Danish indie game developer named Playdead, which is a fitting name for their type of games. The game was released on July 21st, 2010 for the Xbox 360 and eventually got ported over to other gaming systems as well. In Limbo, you control a boy through a hazardous, gloomy forest and your main goal is to find your lost sister. And that's basically it, really. Judging by my extremely short summary, you can easily tell that the developers created this game without storytelling in mind. Hell, you don't even know there is any plot until late into the game, so sorry for spoiling it, I guess. Anyway, I forgive the lack of writing for this game, since it clearly isn't the main focus of it, and even though the plot is cheap, at least it gives the main protagonist a driving force in wanting to achieve his goal. Since Limbo is a 2D puzzle platformer, its gameplay mainly consists of those aspects. However, I will make up another category for this one, being the gameplay style of just walking around, since it appears to have a big emphasis. Sure, there are many instances where you deal with the core gameplay aspects, but there are many other times where you're just walking around without doing any of those. That's due to the game focusing a lot more on its presentation rather than on its gameplay, so that you have time to get invested in the world, and it honestly enhances the experience as a result of this. I usually dislike it when games prioritize writing or presentation over the gameplay, as they are games after all. But for this game, I think it works surprisingly well. I often get very impatient with things, which also counts for when I'm playing a game or watching a television series, as I want to get to the end as quickly as possible. Whenever I'm playing Limbo, I'm not thinking much about the destination, since I'm having an enjoyable experience with the overall journey. The mix between gameplay and presentation is what makes this game so fun to me, since I find great comfort in playing it. Other than the walking aspect of the game, the platforming is well done and have some creative set pieces that can sometimes keep you on the edge of your seat. I can't say much about the puzzles since I'm not really sure what determines great puzzle solving, but I think most of them are well thought out and they do test your intellect a bit. However, there is a flaw I have to point out with them, being that most of these puzzles are trial and error, meaning you have to try and die a lot before figuring how to eventually solve them correctly. This does hinder the pace of an otherwise consistently flowing adventure. Another flaw I have to point out is the length of the game. Newcomers might take 3 hours to finish it, which is an acceptable length for a game like this. But veterans like myself who know the game well can complete it within an hour, and that's not even counting speedruns. What that basically means is that Limbo is more of a one and done type of game, lacking any form of replay value. This is not helped by the absence of collectibles either. Now for the most crucial component of this game, the presentation. The visuals are all black and white. Black is mostly used for floors, enemies and objects, whereas white is used for the background, lighting and a few other stuff. This helps create a murky vibe, especially since it's set in a forest. It's a unique art style for a platformer, since games of that genre have a reputation for being colorful. In addition to this, there's a lot of violence, which strips away another thing you'd expect from a platformer, as they're usually kid-friendly. The violence isn't over the top, as blood isn't red and doesn't spill out in every direction, but the violence is still apparent. That's why an adult age restriction is necessary for Limbo. You can die from falling off great heights, getting crushed by overweight objects, and getting pierced by sharp ones. Other vulgar themes include decapitation of giant spiders, as well as the ability to platform on corpses, which isn't inhumane at all. The audio in Limbo is handled very differently from most other games. Games usually have lots of soundtracks playing for each individual section of the game, whereas in this game there are no tracks to be found. That is, aside from the title theme, which doesn't really count as it's not present while playing the game itself. Instead of soundtracks, Limbo uses sound effects and background noises, which strengthens the theme of being alone in the woods. The sounds are of good quality, making things sound realistic too. While Limbo might be a really short and simple game, I still find it good for what it is. The gameplay isn't all that engaging, but when you blend it together with a fantastic presentation, it creates a really good experience that's worth a shot. I think fans of indie titles can easily get into this game, and perhaps 2D platformer fans might also appreciate it, though they might get turned off by its gore and different art style. I recommend playing this game while it's dark outside, not for spooks, but because it makes the experience even more immersive and even more relaxing to play. I've decided to give Limbo the rating of an 8 out of 10, meaning it's a really good game, at least from my perspective.